This is you. You're 23 years old and you're lying on the floor of a bathroom in an apartment in the Condesa neighborhood of Mexico City. It's 4 in the morning and you can't get up. Not because you're drunk, not because you fell, but because your heart is beating at 200 beats per minute, and every time you try to stand, the world tilts like the entire building is spinning on its axis. Your shirt is soaked in cold sweat. Your jaw is clenched so tight you feel like your teeth are going to shatter. And the worst part isn't the physical pain. The worst part is you don't know exactly what you took tonight. You know it started with an energy drink at 7 in the morning, that it continued with the vape you haven't put down in 2 years, that at the party someone offered you something they described as harmless, and that about 40 minutes ago your body decided it no longer wants to cooperate with you. On the other side of the door, your best friend, a kid from Puebla everyone calls the Russian because he shaved his head one winter, is knocking with his knuckles and asking if you're okay. You don't answer because you can't. You don't have enough air to form words. On your phone there are 3 missed calls from your mom, who lives in Leon, and at this hour is sleeping peacefully without knowing that her oldest son is debating whether to dial the emergency number or wait for this to pass on its own. In the living room of the apartment, there's music playing that you can no longer hear. There are 15 people celebrating the birthday of someone whose name you forgot hours ago, and you're here, on the floor of someone else's bathroom, wondering how a simple cup of coffee put you on the path that brought you to this moment. But to understand that we need to go back 4 years, to a version of you that still doesn't know what's coming. You're 19 years old and you just started studying graphic design at a public university in Guadalajara. You left Leon for the first time in your life. Your dad drives a rideshare 14 hours a day, and your mom works at a stationery store near downtown. Between the two of them, they scrape together enough to pay for a room you share with the Russian, who's studying marketing at the same school. The room is tiny. It has a window that faces a concrete wall and permanently smells like mildew. But it's yours, and it represents the first time you're responsible for your own life. The problem starts where it always starts, with pressure. The first semester wrecks you, not because you're incapable, but because nobody prepared you for the load. 6 classes, 3 professors who demand weekly project submissions, a design program that your second-hand computer takes 20 minutes to open. You need to be awake more hours than the human body is designed to function. And that's where the first substance appears. Caffeine enters your life disguised as necessity. A cup of instant coffee at 6 in the morning before class. The taste is terrible. It tastes like burnt sock water. But 15 minutes later, something happens that feels like magic. The fog disappears. Your thoughts organize themselves. Your brain goes from airplane mode to full connection. What you don't know, what nobody in your life has bothered to explain to you, is that energy is a biological lie. Caffeine doesn't create energy out of nothing. It's a molecular imposter. In your brain, there's a substance called adenosine, which is the way your body tells you you're tired and need to sleep. Caffeine enters your system and blocks those receptors. It's like the low fuel light turning on in your car's dashboard, and you, instead of getting gas, deciding to cover the light with black tape and keep driving at full speed. The problem didn't disappear, you're just ignoring it. Your brain keeps accumulating fatigue in the background, and when the caffeine wears off, all that backed-up adenosine hits you all at once. That's why, at 2 in the afternoon, you feel like you got run over by an invisible semi-truck. Caffeine is a loan shark. It lends you energy now, but when it comes to collect the debt a few hours later, it hits you with a 200% interest rate in exhaustion. And what do? You have another cup. Because apparently anxiety with heart palpitations is what we call productivity these days. 1 cup turns into 2, then 3, then cans of energy drinks that have the equivalent of 4 concentrated espressos. By the end of the first semester, you're consuming more than 800 milligrams of caffeine a day, twice what any doctor considers safe. But you pass your classes. You pull an 8.5 GPA. Your dad calls you on Sunday and tells you he's proud. That call is worth more than any grade. The Russian is the one who introduces you to the second rung. One Tuesday afternoon. While you're working on a typography project due in 12 hours, he pulls a vape out of his backpack and extends it to you like someone passing a pen. Try it. It's mango flavor. It'll take the edge off. Nicotine enters your life wrapped in tropical flavor and vapor that smells like a candy store. What the Russian doesn't explain to you, because he doesn't know it himself, is that nicotine is the masterwork scam of brain chemistry. If caffeine is a loan shark, nicotine is the most successful pyramid scheme in history. It has one particularly dirty trick. It creates the problem it pretends to solve. Vaping doesn't make you feel good. What it does is temporarily stop the discomfort that the previous dose caused. It's the chemical equivalent of wearing shoes 2 sizes too small all day just to experience the immense pleasure of taking them off for 5 minutes. You're not gaining happiness. You're renting brief moments of normalcy at an exorbitant price. You inhale, and within seconds, dopamine spikes, giving you a brief sensation of control. But nicotine has a very short half-life. About 2 hours later, that well-being dissolves and your brain goes into panic mode. You feel tense and restless, not because the world is stressful, but because your brain is throwing a tantrum over its chemical pacifier. We've taken a deadly addiction and repackaged it so it tastes like tropical mango or frozen watermelon. Instead of smelling like an ashtray, you now smell like a cheap bathroom air freshener while inhaling solvents. You're basically paying a monthly subscription to be enslaved to a device that allows you to not feel miserable. Without the nicotine, the world looks gray to you. Not because it is gray, but because you broke your own ability to feel pleasure without outside help. By the 3rd semester, you're spending 1,400 pesos a month on cartridges. Your dad sends you 3,000 for expenses and you burn almost half of it on fruit-flavored vapor. The guilt eats you alive every time you see the deposit hit your account, but the alternative feels worse. Tell us in the comments what country and what neighborhood you're watching from, and if you've ever found yourself trapped in a similar cycle without realizing how it started. The 3rd rung appears at an end-of-semester party in an apartment in Zapopan. The Russian knows people from everywhere, and that night he introduces you to a group of kids from private universities. One of them, a skinny guy with designer glasses everyone calls the Swiss because he spent a summer in Zurich, pulls out a bag of cannabis gummies and hands them out like piñata candy. It's natural, bro. It's medicine from the earth. That line sounds familiar because you've heard it dozens of times. Snake venom and poison ivy are also 100% natural. But you don't see yourself rubbing them on your skin for fun. Cannabis works because THC disguises itself as chemicals your brain already produces called endocannabinoids. It's an imposter that walks into the control room of your brain and starts pressing every button at random. Your perception of time breaks. 5 minutes feel like 5 hours. You're convinced you've solved the mysteries of the universe. But in reality, you've spent 45 minutes staring at a bag of chips trying to decide whether to open it or worship it. At low doses, it's all laughs and music that sounds incredible. But if you overdo it, your brain decides that everyone hates you or that someone is watching you from the kitchen. Paranoia takes over and you become someone who thinks their own heartbeat is too loud. Long term, cannabis turns you into someone who starts brilliant sentences but stops halfway through because you can't remember where you were going. It affects your working memory. You think you're a deep philosopher, but you're just a hungry guy who forgot where he left his keys. Your GPA drops from an 8.5 to a 7.2 in 1 semester. Your dad calls you on Sunday and asks how your grades are going. You tell him everything's fine. It's the first time you lie to him about something important, and that lie settles in your chest like a hot brick you can't move. The Russian starts having problems too. The anxiety from deadlines, a girlfriend who dumped him by text message, the sleepless nights. A cousin of his who's in med school gets him a box of alprazolam, small, white pills that look like toy aspirins. One night, when you can't fall asleep because of the anxiety over a final project, he offers you one. You'll relax in 20 minutes, and tomorrow you'll wake up good as new. Benzodiazepines enter your life like a magic key. They boost GABA receptors, which basically tell your neurons to shut up and go to sleep. The anxiety vanishes as if someone turned down the volume on the entire world. You sleep deeply for the first time in months. But these pills have a sinister side effect. Anterograde amnesia. Your brain stops recording new memories. You're a functional zombie. You walk, you talk, yet you make terrible decisions, but the hard drive isn't saving anything. It's literally the skip intro button for real life. You have a hard problem, you pop a pill, and you skip it. The problem is still there when you wake up, and now you have a new one, an addiction that forms in weeks. And be careful about quitting cold turkey because the withdrawal can cause seizures. You take one on Friday because you're stressed, you blink, and it's Monday. You have no idea how you got back to your room, or why you have 15 missed calls from your mom. They basically silence your body's fire alarm but let the house burn to the ground while you sleep happily on the couch. If you've made it to this point and you're realizing that the line between recreational and destructive is a lot thinner than you thought, hit the like button so more people can see this information that nobody teaches them in school. College ends. You don't graduate with honors, but you graduate, and that's something. You and the Russian move to Mexico City because that's where the job opportunities are. You land a position as a junior designer at an ad agency in Roma Norte. The salary is low, but the title sounds nice. Your dad tells his passengers that his son works in advertising in the capital. That sentence gives him the strength to push through his 14-hour shift. But the substances didn't stay in Guadalajara. The coffee travels with you, the vape travels with you, the weekend cannabis travels with you, and the pills show up every time the work stress levels up. It's at the agency where you run into the Swiss again. Turns out he works at a digital marketing firm in Polanco and runs in the same creative circles. One Friday, he invites you to a party at a penthouse on Reforma. The place is another world. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of Chapultepec. Bottles that cost more than your bi-weekly paycheck lined up on the bar. People who talk about international trips the way you'd comment on the weather. At some point during the night, the Swiss takes you to a room where there's a small group gathered around a marble table. Cocaine doesn't make you smarter or more interesting. It simply tricks your brain into thinking you are. It blocks dopamine reuptake, flooding your reward circuits. The result is an instant and artificial inflation of your ego. Suddenly, you think you have million-dollar ideas and you talk non-stop with absolute confidence about topics you know nothing about. You become the most confident person in the room and, coincidentally, the most insufferable to everyone else. But it's a short-lived scam. The effect fades fast, and when it drops, your dopamine crashes, leaving you anxious, paranoid, and desperate for another line. It's basically renting the personality of a god while paying with the health of a mortal. While you feel invincible, your heart is having a physical panic attack. Your arteries constrict, your blood pressure skyrockets. It's the most expensive way to turn yourself into a paranoid wreck with cardiac problems who checks out the window every 5 minutes. You spend 4,000 pesos that night, more than half your bi-weekly pay. Yet Monday, you show up to the agency with an irritated nose and a sadness you can't explain. Your boss, a woman in her 40s who wears oversized glasses and has no filter, asks you if you're okay. You tell her you ate something that didn't sit well. The stone in your chest grows. The Swiss's parties become frequent. At one of them, someone offers you MDMA. They tell you it's the ultimate experience, that you're going to feel a connection to the universe you didn't know existed. MDMA grabs your serotonin reserves, the happiness hormone, and dumps them all at once, like someone squeezing a tube of toothpaste until it bursts. For 4 hours, you're a sweaty being of light who believes world peace is possible if everyone just dances at the same time. Suddenly, you're having deep conversations with strangers in the bathroom of a club, and touching the wall feels like the most spiritual experience of your life. Your jaw is so tense you could chew through a brick. But that happiness wasn't free. It was a loan with predatory interest rates. When the party ends, your brain is completely dry. You've spent all of next week's happiness in a single night. Then comes what they call the crash. You feel empty, apathetic, and miserable. Not because something bad happened, but because your brain chemistry is bankrupt. You find yourself teary-eyed on a Tuesday afternoon because you dropped a spoon, or because a pet food commercial felt too emotional. During one of those crashes, the Russian suggests microdosing LSD for creativity. He says all the programmers at tech companies in San Francisco do it, that it opens your mind with no side effects. You listen to him because at this point your decision-making ability is as eroded as your nasal septum. If alcohol shuts down your prefrontal cortex, LSD unplugs your reality's router and reconnects the cables at random. Users call it opening your mind, which is a fancy way of saying you're going to completely scramble your perception of who you are and where you are. With a dose that's not micro at all, your brain starts glitching. You get synesthesia, the one moment in your life when you can hear the color blue and taste the flavor of the number 7. But the trip lasts between 8 and 12 hours. Once you get on that roller coaster, you can't get off, even if you decide halfway through that you no longer want to watch the walls breathe. Your experience isn't spiritual, it's terrifying. You spend 6 hours convinced your heart is going to stop. The Russian tries to calm you down, but his face distorts in ways that send you into panic. The ironic part is that LSD doesn't cause physical addiction. In fact, tolerance builds so fast that if you try to take it 2 days in a row, it simply doesn't work. It's as if your own brain is telling you it's had enough crazy for the week. But the damage is done. For weeks, you see strange visual patterns on the walls of your office, flashes that appear and disappear at the edge of your vision, hallucinogen, persisting, perception disorder. Your brain didn't fully forget the trip. Scared, you swear you'll never touch anything illegal again. But the substance that nearly destroys you next is perfectly legal, sold on every corner, and people will make you feel weird if you turn it down. Alcohol comes in hard when you start going out with your coworkers from the agency every Friday. It's the only central nervous system depressant that people will make you feel excluded for not consuming. It shuts down your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain in charge of telling you that maybe you shouldn't dance on top of the table. You drink to silence your internal designated driver and let an uninhibited monkey take the wheel. At first, you feel euphoric because alcohol releases dopamine and strips away your inhibitions. You think you're the funniest person alive, but you're yelling instead of talking and repeating the same story for the 5th time. Then comes the biphasic effect. The more you drink, the worse you feel. But your judgment is so impaired that you think more alcohol will fix the problem. Blackouts become frequent. Alcohol blocks the receptors that allow you to store new memories. It's time travel into the future where you wake up with a headache, unexplained bruises, and photos on your phone that ruin your reputation. Long term, you're trading your liver for fat, all for the privilege of sending embarrassing texts at 3 in the morning. And that brings us to the party in Condesa. That night, completely wasted, someone you don't know offers you something they describe as the next level. They don't tell you what it is. They just tell you it's going to make you feel like never before. You're so intoxicated that your ability to make decisions is non-existent. What enters your system contains methamphetamine. If caffeine is a bank loan, methamphetamine is selling your entire future in exchange for the energy of 1,000 suns compressed into one night. It reverses dopamine transporters, lighting up your brain like never before. You feel invincible, euphoric, and supernaturally focused. But from the outside, you're a guy with bulging eyes who's been talking nonstop for hours about nothing coherent. It gives you unlimited energy to do absolutely useless things. Since it eliminates hunger and sleep, your body starts consuming itself. The physical toll is devastating. But what they gave you wasn't just that. Your heart goes haywire. The chest pain hits like a punch from the inside. Sweat soaks through your shirt. You duck into the bathroom and collapse on the floor. The Russian finds you 10 minutes later. For the first time in your life, you see genuine fear in your best friend's eyes. He dials emergency services. The ambulance takes 26 minutes. The paramedics stabilize you on the way to the hospital. In the ER, a doctor who looks like he hasn't slept in 30 hours reviews your results and says something that gets burned into your memory. We found traces of multiple substances mixed together. You had a severe arrhythmia. A few more minutes and this conversation wouldn't be happening. Your mom arrives from Lyon on a 6 a.m. bus. She doesn't yell at you. She doesn't scold you. That would be easier. She just sits next to your hospital bed, takes your hand, and cries without making a sound. Your dad didn't come because someone has to keep driving the cab to pay the bills. But that night he calls you and stays silent for 30 seconds before he can speak. That silence weighs more than any lecture. Weeks later, the toxicologist reviews your full results. What they gave you contained traces of fentanyl. Opioids work by hijacking receptors in your brain to block pain and generate a warm euphoria. Users describe the feeling as a hug of total safety. But that warmth is a deadly trap. Your brain rewrites its survival priorities. The drug becomes as necessary as oxygen. The most terrifying part is respiratory depression. Opioids relax you so much that your brain simply forgets how to breathe. There's no gasping. There's no struggle. You just fall asleep, feeling at peace, and your body decides that breathing is too much effort. It's like a soft blanket that wraps around you lovingly while it slowly suffocates you. You were lucky. The dose was low and the Russian acted fast. Thousands of people don't get that lucky. Recovery is slow, uncomfortable, and humiliating. It's the sessions with a psychologist your mom pays for by sacrificing her savings. It's the sleepless nights because your brain no longer remembers how to produce well-being on its own. It's the moment the Russian confesses that he needs help, too. The Swiss never answered your messages again. To him, you were just another guest at another party. Your dad never found out all the details. Your mom carried that truth alone to protect him. And that silent sacrifice is the thing that hurts you the most out of everything that happened. Every single one of these substances operates on the same principle. They offer you a temporary solution to a real problem and charge you a price that's always higher than the benefit. Caffeine charges you with multiplied exhaustion. Nicotine with slavery disguised as relief. Cannabis with your memory. Benzodiazepines with entire chunks of your life. Ecstasy with weeks of emptiness. LSD with a permanently distorted perception. Alcohol with your dignity. Cocaine with your heart. Methamphetamine with your entire body. And opioids with your breathing. Today, you're 25 years old. You're not an exceptional case. You're an ordinary kid who went falling rung by rung down a staircase that seemed harmless and that nearly took him to a place you don't come back from. The difference between you and the ones who didn't make it was a friend who dialed the right number and a few minutes of margin. If this story looks like yours or like someone's, share it. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming. See you in the next one.